And I usually can see when I'm live. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, you are live.
I can barely hear you. Hello?
You are live.
I can barely hear you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. We're having a little bit of technical issues here, Chris. I can barely hear you.
How about now?
Nope. Let me see. Let me just tweak that a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Hardly. I can hear you, but barely. Anyway, I'm just going to have to strain to hear you. But usually, everything they've changed everything. Don't you hate it when you just get used to something, and then they change it on you? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Spirit World Sees All. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I can't see the chat room. I can't see anything at all. I can't see if anybody's replying or not. I'm going to have to rely on you, Chris, to let me know if things are working okay.
We are hearing from the people who are logged in that they can hear us both fine.
Okay, I can barely hear you. Anyway, let's just excuse me. Let's just keep going. So, before we begin, first of all, I'd like to say good morning to my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, who, as always, is laughing because we're having all these problems. As always, is standing to my right side. And I would also like to say good morning to Chris. But Chris, I can hardly hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just great.
Sorry?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning to you two from Vermont. What's the weather like in Vermont?
We finally have sun here.
Oh, really? Okay. You sound to me as if you're coming from a tunnel. Have you played with that little thing on your the microphone thing? Have you played with
Yes.
that at all? Because I can barely hear you, so I'm struggling here. But anyway, all right. Well, let's just get into it then, because all morning long I've been connecting with my daddy. I've been, of course, connecting with Grey Eagle. But today, as we know, is, yes, it is what we in Britain call Remembrance Day. We would celebrate this coming Sunday with Remembrance Sunday. I do not have a poppy anywhere in sight. I've not been anywhere to get a poppy, to get myself a poppy. But we also, well, not only we call it Remembrance Day, we actually call it Poppy Day. So to all of you in England, I hope you're having a great Poppy Day, and I hope that you are really, sort of remembering all of your wonderful heroes. I'm sure most of you have many of them, as do I. Chris, I know that today is a very special day for you too, because I know that your husband Mike was at one point in the military. Isn't that where you met him? You met him in the military, I do believe. So, would you like to start us off with a remembrance? I hope other people can hear you better than I can. But would you like to start us off with a remembrance for Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike was in the Air Force. He's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. He was also at 17 years old in the Vermont National Guard, Army Guard. And he also was I believe he was a lieutenant colonel in the Vermont State Guard. So he had a lot of military experience, and I absolutely did meet him in his flight suit because he was a navigator in the Air Force, and he was extremely handsome in that outfit when I met him.
Um, are you done? I think I heard you say he was extremely handsome in his outfit.
Yes.
A uniform does things, doesn't it? A uniform definitely helps. That's why men swoon over nurses, women swoon over, soldiers and people in the military. The uniform, really does something. When I think about my father, um, his uniform was a khaki uniform. He was a soldier all of his life. Tonight, when we do our memorial or Remembrance Day, we're going to do that. Chris will tell you more about that in a few minutes, but we're going to be telling all sorts of stories about our heroes. But I thought it would be fun also to have a backstory or two, because it's amazing that when we put on a uniform, men and women alike, we become different. Perhaps it makes us feel more secure. Perhaps it gives us more security, or perhaps we're able to be more of who we want to be, and which is all well and good. And my father was definitely a hero. He was left on the beaches as thousands and thousands and thousands of other soldiers were at Dunkirk. And when the Germans were advancing, and they were literally sitting ducks. Many thousands of people were killed in the Battle of Dunkirk, and my father was one of those who was rescued. I remember, not that I remember, I was not born to hear this speech. I'm not that old, everybody, but obviously history tells us that when we discovered in England that all of these men were on the beaches in Dunkirk and no way to get home and no way to be rescued, Winston Churchill got on the radio, and he literally asked everybody with a small boat, a large boat, a fishing boat, a rowing boat, whatever it was, if they would get in their boats, man their boats, and cross the channel, row across the channel. Now the channel was the stretch of water that still to this day obviously goes between France and England, and it's what separates us. It's what separates England, makes England an island from the rest of Europe. And so England was an island all to itself. So, of course, the only way to rescue these poor men on the beaches, to get them home safe, was for anybody and everybody with a boat to go out there. And it was amazing because men and women, true heroes, I think, who were not soldiers. They were just ordinary people who had fishing boats and little paddle boats even. And the idea of rowing in a small fishing boat across the English Channel must have been such a terrifying thing, because it's not a forgiving sea. It is very rough, very cold. It's a terrible crossing, even on a big giant ferry, which I've done many times. It's a rough crossing, but Winston Churchill inspired everybody to go out there and to get to the beaches at Dunkirk and to rescue the soldiers. And many people, heroes, because this is what our topic is today, heroes, the unsung heroes, the people that very few recognize or remember except their own families, went out in their rowing boats, in their fishing vessels, in order to help the stranded soldiers on the beaches of Dunkirk. And many of those people who went to rescue were themselves drowned in the attempt. My father was one of those soldiers on the beaches, and thanks to the bravery and the courage and the determination of so many of our British nation to get out there and to get on the beaches and to get in their boats and to try to save the soldiers. I mean, it was an amazing, amazing feat, and my father was one of those who was rescued on the beaches of Dunkirk. So, a hero being rescued by heroes, I feel. I know that many of you have your own stories. I know that many of you have your own memories and remembrances. And I'm sure that there are many of you listening who did, in fact, lose a hero, lose someone in your family to the war, to the fighting, whichever war that might be. Um, Today we're going to be, asking questions, looking for comments from you all. We're going to be remembering not just the soldiers who wore the medals. My father had a rack of medals, ribbons and medals, you name it. Um, I know I've told this story before, you may have heard this story before, but my father was 13 years old, and he was the youngest of a huge family, many, many, many brothers and sisters. And he was very much coddled by his mother. I think he was the only one of all the kids who was ever coddled. But even so, tales of glory, tales of adventure, his brothers being in the army or being in the service of some kind, all of those things led to him wanting to run away to the army, which is what he did. So he joined the army when he was 13 years old. He lied and told them, I think, that he was 14 and a half, because in those days that's what you had. You had to be 14 and a half years old in order to be accepted. He somehow, I have no idea how he did it, but my father, knowing my father well, um, he was smart about these things. He fooled the army to the point where when they finally discovered that he'd lied, that he wasn't really 14 and a half, I think he was 14 and a half or 15 when they discovered it, and they decided to let him stay in. So even from being a very young boy, can you imagine? We look at our 13-year-olds now. Look at my grandson, who's 8. He'll be 9 in February. It's inconceivable that in another 4 years' time that he would run away. I know it's running away to sea, but running away to the army, running away anywhere to fight, it's inconceivable for me to think. But nevertheless, my father wasn't the only one. There were many others who did the same thing. My father was a professional soldier, so that he came out, I think, when my two brothers were born. He came out for a year or two and then went right back in again because he could not deal with civilian life. So my father was a professional soldier all of his life. So this tonight, when we all get together tonight, and Chris is going to tell you how you can get together with us tonight, I'd like to hear your stories. If you have a hero who is not a soldier, not a nurse, if you have a hero who is just simply somebody you know, or someone you love, or someone in your family, their heroics don't have to be about fighting. This is not just about war. We're celebrating heroes of all shapes, sizes, and ages. And so that's what we'll be doing tonight. Chris, because I've no idea what's going on with Restream today, but is there anybody there? And if there is anybody there, are there any comments or questions? And then at some point this morning, I would like to tell you one story of my father as a soldier, as a foot soldier, actually. I'd like to tell one story that he told to me, and then we'll be taking more questions and comments. Chris.
Yes, Mary is on. She says, I have a loving family who have since passed who served in the military. I'm extremely blessed to say that my brother, now who is a cancer survivor, also served in the Navy. Gray Eagle, can you help him?
I'm so frustrated here, Chris. I can barely hear you. I can barely hear what you're saying. But something about, can Grey Eagle help Mary or Mary's
brother.
Is there any way for you to speak a little louder or get a little closer to the microphone? Maybe that might help a little bit. Well, certainly, Mary, put your brother on the healing list, and Gregor tells me he will lay his hands on your brother, and we'll try and help in that way. Okay, Chris.
Teresa is on. I have an uncle who served during World War II and Korea in the Navy. Another uncle who served in the Air Force. a cousin who served in Vietnam, and I served in the Coast Guard. That's from Teresa.
Teresa, well done you. You served in the Coast Guard. I'm barely hearing it, but I'm hearing some of it, so that's a good thing. And it sounds to me like your family, you have, it seems as if you have a family of heroes. So good for all of you. And again, today is about not just remembering, but thanking those people. You know, my father, I was talking to Chris yesterday, and I was talking to another friend of mine who said, well, you know, we joined the army so we can help, you know, get, keep our nation free, right? My father did not join the army to keep the nation free. My father joined the army because it was an adventure. And I think that for many people, they don't necessarily join whichever of the forces it is, or whichever um, uh, cause that they have. I don't think they necessarily join for righteous reasons, but they do have amazingly, as my father did, amazingly righteous actions. His intention was not to, you know, save the country. The country wasn't at war when my father joined the army. So, you know, that was not his intention. His intention was he wanted, I guess, he wanted to see the world, and he wanted to experience, you know, the adventures that the army conceivably could give him. I don't think for 1 minute he joined the army thinking that one day would go to war, because, as I've said, when he was old enough to join the army, then the war was there was no war at that time. So, but when you're in it, you know, sometimes, I mean, I think true heroes are not those people who necessarily intend to do heroic things. They do heroic things because of who they are, and because of the way they sometimes need to take an action, even if it's a stupid action, or stupid as far as they're concerned, an action that risks their lives. I think that, you know, a hero, somebody can become a hero in the blink of an eye, when their intention is, I just got to do something, and they then go and do it and become the hero afterwards. I think most of our heroes are shaking in their boots after they've done the heroic deed or taken the heroic action. I know my father was absolutely not afraid to say how afraid he was when he was in the trenches, for instance. So, you know, I don't think being a hero is something that we do deliberately. I think it's something that we do because of who we are. So, you know, so not only are we remembering them today, we're thanking them today too. So, Teresa, thank you. Chris.
Let's see. Cheryl is
I'm
asking.
sorry. Say again.
Cheryl is asking, do military heroes have a special place on the other side?
I don't think so. I think because I think that, you know, a hero can be that mother who is left all by herself to fend for her children, and she does everything she possibly can above and beyond what she would normally even believe herself to be capable of doing. You know, I think we're all capable every day of taking small heroic actions. So as that, you know, I'm going to check with Gregor, because I'm saying no, I don't think so, but no, it is no, they don't. I think we're all, you know, we all have our merits, and you know, I think that that the only consideration that we should have is whether or not our heroes have a place in our heart. And I can tell you that, you know, my daddy's been gone a long time, but he holds a very special place in my heart. So I'm hoping that rather than being revered on the other side for being a hero, he's very happy with the fact that he's right here in my heart and always will be. Chris.
Teresa's adding her dad, who served in the Korean War, and she says, if you want adventure, join the Coast Guard.
I'm sorry, what was that last again?
If you're looking for adventure, join the Coast Guard.
If you're looking for adventure, join the Coast Guard. Oh, that's funny. No, I'm not going to. I'm too old. But yeah, I would imagine that that would be adventure. It would be how on earth, Teresa, you did it. It's got to have been so scary, so terrifying, and yet you did it anyway. See, that's a hero, going in there and being absolutely terrified and doing it anyway. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day about you know, my church, the church that I, let's say, grew up in, um, the Baptist church, which I loved the people in that church, and uh, I was very fond of Bible stories, and one of the most inspiring Bible stories for me was the story of Daniel in the lion's den. And for those of you who don't know about Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel, well, a lot of the disciples were asked to denounce Christ, that they would not follow Christ, that they did not believe in Christ, and you know, and they were asked by their whoever it was at the time to either you denounce your leader, denounce Christ, or you're going to be in the lion's den, and that's the end of that. That be your punishment for believing in something we don't believe in. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of Christians who refused to renounce Christ, and they were put into the arena. If you've ever been to Rome, you'll see all of the amazing arena that they used, and they would often have this sport with their, you know, the captured enemies. They would put them into the arena and let them fight the lions. Of course, there's no contest; the lions are going to win, come what may. I don't know if the Christians were given swords to protect themselves. What I know and what inspired me about this story was that Daniel, representative of all of those other heroes who refused to renounce Christ, they walked proudly, probably knees shaking, probably terrified, but having chosen to die a terrible death rather than to renounce Christ. And so Daniel, with all of the other Christians that they had rounded up in the day, were put into the arena, and the lions were let loose, and the Christians were torn limb from limb. But the point is, rather than compromise their own beliefs, rather than bow to a dictator, rather than say that they didn't believe in order to save their lives, and I'm sure many did, and who can blame them, but rather than do that, Daniel and all of those other Christians who chose that route stood proud and probably prayed and were torn to shreds by the lions. And I always felt that story inspired me so much, that people could believe so strongly in something or someone that they would stand and be brave, proclaiming their beliefs. I suppose that's what war's about, isn't it? When soldiers are in the trenches, they can do one of two things. They can run, and who blames them if they do? Or they can stand and say, well, I guess this is it then. Let's fight for what we believe is the right thing to do. And, you know, and I was always inspired by Daniel, and I always thought to myself, as a young girl and then a young woman, I thought, you know, if I ever got the chance to be in that position where I had to choose something that I believed in, something that I believed was right and honest and good, rather than renounce my beliefs, I would want to, if I ever could possibly be like Daniel, and stand proud and say, well, this is what I believe anyway, whether you do or not, and take the consequences. Luckily, nobody gets thrown into the lion's den anymore, but the consequences are that you can be disrespected, you can be disowned. The consequences are that you can have people looking at you like you're a terrible person. You know, people still judge. You've got judgment all around. But if you have a strong belief in what you are, what you do, who you believe in, what you believe in, you know, I would urge all of you to stand proud like Daniel, to stand proud like your wonderful heroes, those people that you look up to and respect. Stand proud and own your beliefs and own who you are, because that's what Daniel did. That's what the Christians did. In every war, you know, one side thinks that they're right, the other side thinks that they're right. It's a difficult situation, isn't it? You can't blame, you know, the German soldiers for fighting. Well, most of them pushed into it anyway, but you can't blame the German soldiers for thinking that they're fighting for right, because that's what they were told. You can't blame the British soldiers and the Australian and the New Zealand soldiers. You can't blame all of those, and the American soldiers. You can't blame them for standing up for what they believe. Each side thinks that they are right in a war. Each side is fighting for what they believe is right and justice. But the fact that they just stand and fight for what they believe in is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And, you know, that's what life is about today, isn't it? Teaching your children to stand up and be honest and have integrity, and don't allow other people to sway you against the beliefs that you know are the right thing to believe in or the right thing to do. Chris.
Gary is on. He said, "My father-in-law is the sole survivor in his company from the Battle of Saipan. He was bayoneted from hand-to-hand combat and survived by playing dead. He just turned 96."
Oh, wow. 96. I didn't get what the battle was. I didn't hear what you said the battle was, but thank you, Gary, for that. I hope you're joining us tonight and tell that story tonight and other stories. I'm going to tell you a story now because, you know, we're not just going to be talking about, you know, I said at the beginning of the show, we're not just going to be talking about the heroes on the battlefield and so on. We're going to be talking about, you know, my father was definitely a hero in the eyes of his country, in the eyes of all of the men and women when he wore his uniform, when he spoke about the war. He was definitely a hero. Was he a hero, though, out of uniform? Was he a hero with the family? Did the man who stood and fought and put himself and put his life in danger again and again and again, was that man the same man that sort of graced our home? What was he like? And one thing I've always wondered, in fact, I was talking to Chris this morning because Chris was asking me about my mother and my grandmother, because everyone thinks that the gift that I have comes from my grandmother Eliza, who I've often said used to hear voices and was in fact a patient in the psychiatric ward. But what Chris had never heard me say, perhaps I haven't said it so often and maybe I should say it more, was that my father was also very mediumistic, and he'd been told many, many times over the years, from even a very young age, he was told that he had the ability, that he also was mediumistic. And it's true that my father definitely had this, call it a sixth sense or whatever it is. I think he was wounded once in battle. In all the years that he was a soldier, he was wounded once, and he got some shrapnel in his leg, so it wasn't a terrible wound. Somehow he went through the war, and I remember having an occasion to chat to him. And you know, my father didn't talk very much about the war, and he it wasn't the kind of person you could have a conversation with until I was much older. But I remember somehow knowing that at one point he had fervently believed in God, and he'd fervently believed in all of that stuff, but then through the war he'd become very jaded and very, you know, very let's say skeptical about the whole thing. But I remember, and I'm going to tell you a story tonight, which actually belies what I've just said to you about him. I'm not going to say any more about that story, but I have a great story for you tonight. But here's a story for this morning, because, believing in God was very important to me, because I had this innate belief in God, in a higher power. And I've no idea where it came from, because my parents were certainly never talked about God, and my parents never went to church. And you heard me say I grew up in the Baptist church. Well, we were sent off so that my mother could watch the movie on a Sunday. I mean, it wasn't that they were religious. They just, it was a way of sort of getting us out of the house for a while, which was fine. But I remember my father, I was always wondered, what did he believe? And, did he believe in fate? Did he believe in a higher power? And we must have been having this conversation once, and he told me the story of when he'd first, gone to war. He was a foot soldier marching through France, and with all of the hundreds of thousands of other soldiers doing the same thing. And so they were walking and marching rather, and at this point, for some reason, it must have been to do with the terrain, they were walking single file. So as they're walking, my father used to teach us when we were kids. We used to have to, when we had to pretend to be soldiers, we used to have to march. My three sisters and I would have march around the garden, left. I had a good home and I left. I had a good home and I left. And on. So my father's describing, not necessarily saying that, because they had other things that they used to say as well, but he was marching left, right, through this terrain as much as they could. And all of a sudden, the whoever it was, the guy in charge shouted, "Halt!" And they were so well trained, this group of soldiers, that they immediately halted, would halt, and they stopped. And as they stopped, the man in front of my father was shot and fell at my father's feet. And my father's first reaction was that had he taken one more step, had halt come a moment later, that would be my father lying there. My father always felt, and we talked about it a little bit, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And obviously that was not my father's time to go. That the bullet that you could have said was meant for him was, fortunately or otherwise, somebody else's bullet. Being in the right place at the right time, being in the right place at the wrong time, fate took a hand. And my father had many, many experiences through the war of things like that happening, where it almost seemed as if, unfortunately, it was very often at the expense of somebody else or others. But unfortunately, he felt that he had certainly somebody. I don't think he ever used the word angel, but certainly had somebody watching over him, making sure that it wasn't him. I'd love to hear if any of you have those kinds of stories. I know that when we had our fabulous Halloween story, Gary, who's just been on, told us the story of how his grandmother came to him and loomed over him and shouted for him to get out. And he was so terrified, he leapt out of bed. And almost seconds after that, as he jumped into his brother's bed, they heard this enormous crash, and the ceiling over Gary's bed came crashing down. Certainly, Gary's grandmother was his angel in that moment, because had he not moved in that split second, he could have been crushed under the ceiling. So my father always, and through war, and seeing fighting, and seeing what happened to people, and sort of, and having that one experience of many that he told me about, that as soon as the guy said, halt. They stopped, they halted. And within a nanosecond of them halting, the guy in front of him dropped dead because the bullet that could have been for my father, unfortunately, was meant for the soldier in front of him. So I know that my father believed in fate. Now, does it mean if you believe in fate, then that you believe in God? I know that my father believed in God, even though he turned away from him for quite some time in his life. But we'd love to have, if any of you got any of those kinds of stories, we'd love to have them too. Chris.
Well, I know there are a few people who have signed up for
Sorry,
tonight.
I'm really sorry, Chris. I cannot hear you.
There are a few people who have signed up for tonight that have their stories ready.
Oh, good. Good. Well, we're excited. Do you want to tell more about that, Chris?
So tonight is a Zoom event. It is a meeting rather than a webinar. You must email our office, Chris, Kris, at rosemaryaltea.com, and I will send you the link to register for this Zoom event. So it's not live on Facebook. It is a private room for us all to see each other and share our experiences. So we hope you email the office if you want to join us tonight.
I think you're done. Would you like to tell people why we're doing it this way, Chris?
All right, so we're doing this Zoom meeting in a private way because of, let's call them bombers. They call them Zoom bombers. So this allows only the people who are really interested in this subject and who would like to spend time with Rosemary and hear these stories and share these stories the opportunity in a safer space.
Okay. And we're going to really, really hope that the sound improves. And I've really got to figure out why I can't see the chat room anymore. And I don't know what to do about it. And I'm terrified of pressing the wrong buttons. But somehow today, Chris, if we can get together, you and I are going to be trying to sort this out. So I'm hoping that everybody can hear you and also that they can hear me and that it's only me who is struggling with the sound here. Do we have any more comments and questions? I really feel that we're going to, end this, especially as we're doing tonight anyway. But we're going to end it this morning because I'm really having to struggle and strain to hear what it is you're saying. I'm afraid. Are there any other comments or questions that we like before we end this morning?
Well, if you can hear me, Helen is saying, I've heard of stories where kids recall their last life being in a war or battle. Do you think reincarnation is real?
I heard something about kids and I heard something about reincarnation. I didn't really understand any of the rest of it. Do you want to speak, shout into the microphone or something, and we'll try again? And if not, I'm quitting.
Is reincarnation real?
Yeah, well, I heard that part.
That's the crux of the question.
Oh, um, it's very complicated. It's a very complex and a very complicated issue. We make choices. Some of us, when we pass, we choose to travel to other places. I have to tell you that the universe and the many universes that are out there give us lots of different choices. Some of us choose to come back here and do this all over again. But I think that when it's my turn, I'm going to say, oh, I really, unless somebody says, no, we want you to do this or this. I think really I would like to sort of travel around. So you can come back to this earth. I do not believe, I've said how many times I've said this, but I do not believe that, we die, we go up there, wherever that is. we stay for a bit and then we come back down and then we go up and we come down. I call it the yo-yo syndrome. I do not believe in it at all. No, in any way, shape or form. And I've had so many people in the spirit world who've explained that no, that is not how it works at all. This is an idea. Just remember this. God did not come down to heaven and say, okay, you're going to have to do this all again. Nobody heard him. Well, maybe Moses might have heard him. Maybe some of us hear those in the spirit world. But remember that man sort of tries to figure out how these things work. And a lot of these ideas are man's ideas and maybe based on certain truths, but not the whole truth by any means at all. So do I believe in reincarnation for the sake of it, that everybody has to do it? No, I don't. However, if you do, please hold on to that belief. And you know, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just here to say I personally don't buy it. But then I'm a very sort of pragmatic person. I'm a very down-to-earth person. I am very skeptical, more skeptical than anybody else you could wish to meet. So I have examined in my way this idea of reincarnation from every angle, and it doesn't wash with me, I'm afraid. Right, Chris, anything else?
No, that's it, Rosemary.
Okay, well, I'm really very sorry. I barely hear Chris. You sound like you're sort of at the very far end of a little tunnel down there. So sorry about that. But thank you all for joining us. If you want to know more about us, please email Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com or, sorry, Chris, Kris. She's the one who answers the emails anyway. So best to email her, Chris, Kris at rosemaryaltea.com. Or you can go to our website, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. We are so excited about tonight. I have a great story about faith and prayer for you concerning my wonderful, amazing, heroic and lovely daddy who is standing to my side, and my brother who is another hero standing to my side. I might tell a story about him as well, how he went missing. Yes. Yeah, anyway, there you are, you see. I've got lots of stories to tell. We hope you've got lots of stories to tell. We're looking forward to sharing them tonight. In the meantime, please, everybody, thank you for joining us. Chris, thank you so much. I'd like to especially say thank you to Grey Eagle. So everybody, please have a very blessed rest of the day. I look forward to seeing you whenever I see you. We're back here on Saturday morning with our story time, and we'll probably be doing an off the cuff at some point as well. We hope that you're all having a memorable day, embracing your loved ones in the spirit world, embracing those heroes are still with you. For instance, Gary's I think it was his uncle, or I don't remember because I could hardly hear you, Chris, sorry. But there are lots of heroes. We have lots and lots of heroes. Can you take the time today, just today, to, whether they were in the war, whatever they were, or if they're simply heroes to you, if it's a mother battling to feed her children, if it's a father working at a job he hates in order to sort of pay the bills for us. I mean, those are heroic, small heroic things. Can we spend the day today showing our appreciation for them and saying thank you to them for all the wonderful things that they do? I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully this evening, but whenever. Please, everybody, have a very blessed rest of the day and have a very blessed rest of the week, everybody, and the weekend. Bye-bye.